Hey guys, Otaku here, back with another video. So I was originally going to do a vlog over my regional experience that happened just this past weekend as of recording this video. The regional was held was being managed really just poorly, and I never got really time to actually do any vlogging. So we're just gonna kind of do a quick recap. However, if you do like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content, consider subscribing and also leaving a like and possibly even commenting on this video to kind of help out the algorithm. But with that, let's just jump into the video. So for some quick context, I only have been playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh for about 2-ish years. I started during Power of the Elements, so basically the release of Tearlaments. However, despite that being just a short amount of time, I have been making very large strides and becoming a good duelist very quickly. However, as it stands, I currently only have one goal, and that is to get my invite. Now, I don't at the current moment have any intention to actually attend Nationals if I did get my invite. I just want to be able to prove to myself that I can actually get my invite. And once I achieve that goal, I'll actually set higher goals to top a regional, win a regional, top a YCS, win a YCS, etc., etc. Move up the ladder, but baby steps first. And since my introduction into competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, I have attended only 3 regionals, mainly because of finances and timing. My first regional, I got absolutely butchered. I took Pearly, and it was just a big eye-opener to what competitive Yu-Gi-Oh is to look like going forward. My second regional, I went undefeated for 6 rounds, and I choked on the last 3, and I came really close to getting my invite. However, due to tiebreakers, I was too low on the X3 charts that I didn't end up getting top 48. So this past weekend was my 3rd ever regional, and it once again was top 48, and unfortunately, I didn't get my invite. Out of the top 48 cut to get your invite, I got 73rd, and even though I was 73rd, I actually was incredibly close, the closest I have ever been to getting my invite, and that is because my record was 5-2-2, meaning that one of my 2 draws had to be a win, and it turns out that one very minor misplay is the reason that that draw was not a victory. But let's real quick go over the games that I did play and possibly discuss what I could have done better in these games to possibly turn it around. I will get into the deck list later in the video, but I was packing Branded Despia, and funny enough, my round 1 was the mirror match. Despite the fact that I know Branded inside and out, I've never actually played the mirror match, so that was an experience, and I actually learned a lot with not only the mirror match, but going against Branded going forward with any other deck that I play in the future. This did, however, end up being a 2-0. I got my ass kicked. Game 1, I won the die roll, and I decided to go first. I opened Quem and 4 bricks, one of which was Fusion Duplication. So I normal summoned Quem, dumped out Fallen of Albaz, and set Fusion Duplication. And then this game was actually when I learned Fusion Duplication can target any fusion or polymerization card in either graveyard. So it was at this point that I realized that, hey, I'm going against the mirror match. I'm just going to wait for him to go Branded Fusion, and I'll do it to him. That being said, he still ended up outpacing me, and he was playing more of a hand trap heavy build, whereas, as I said, we'll get into the deck build later, I'm not running any hand traps. Game 2 was a kind of similar scenario, except I had full gas. I chose to go first, obviously, because I lost, and I ended up gimmick puppet locking him. Well, he ended up just, having a decent hand to be able to just pass his turn by setting a couple cards, and one of those cards was Super Polymerization. And basically, as the duel progressed, he used my own gimmick puppet against me with his Sanctifier. So it's because of this that I learned if I'm going against the mirror match, just don't try the puppet lock, just try to out-resource your opponent. The only real thing I could have done better here was have more practice against the mirror match, but also acknowledging the fact that my opponent can use the puppet against me if I puppet lock them. And also, realistically, I should have just been smarter and more patient on game 1, and I could have probably still out-resourced. Rounds 2 and 3 were actually both against Branded Voiceless, and I have very little practice against Voiceless, but I learned that they Jowgen lock. Now, of course, Jowgen lock is because they run the Branded engine, and they could still technically puppet lock, but I guess they were on a budget. Turns out when low is $240 for a playset, your wallet gets a little light after those 3 cards. But anyways, game 1, I puppet locked him, and he almost played through it, but I ended up out-resourcing him simply because he couldn't special summon. Game 2, he ended up going first, and he Jowgen locked me. However, he messed it up, and he summoned the Jowgen on my side of the board. So I just activated Jowgen to discard a card and pop his whole field. That being said, I found out via the hard way that Voiceless Voice, you have to out their board twice because they can get that Omni Negate back a second time. However, despite the fact that he messed up the Jowgen lock, he was still able to out-resource me, and Game 2 I ended up losing. And Game 3, time was called before any damage could be done, so it ended up being one of my 2 draws. The unfortunate part here is that game 3 could have actually been a win if it wasn't for the fact that the voiceless player, when we went to game 3, there was 6 minutes on the clock and he was incredibly slow playing. I called a judge over and they gave him a warning, and by the time I was ready to call a judge over again, it was already time called. However, realistically, and we'll get into the deck list later as I keep saying, but I didn't run Masquerade for this regional, and I'm heavily regretting it because since I went first in game 3, I could have just summoned Masquerade and time wouldn't have been a problem. As for round 3, like I said, it was also branded voiceless, and I just got 2-0'd. He went first, he Jowgen locked me, didn't mess it up, I had no way to play around it. Game 2, I heavily bricked, and I just couldn't, I couldn't kill him. So yeah, after these first 3 rounds, it was looking a little grim for the invite. I drove 4 hours to this regional, paid a significant amount of money just to get there, and I'm already X2-1. Wasn't looking pretty. I was getting a little down in the dumper. However, we make it to round 4. Still not quite out of it yet, but it is not looking pretty. We make it to round 4, and I'm going against Exo Sisters. Despite getting hit with Shifter in both games, I just kind of 2-0'd them. It wasn't much of a challenge because I think Exo Sisters just has a really bad matchup against Branded. They're all light monsters, so they're super poly targets, but also I run a bunch of light monsters. I run Albaz that can eat them up. It was just realistically not a good matchup for the Exo Sister player. So here we are. We have a win under our belt. We are on the cusp of just dropping because we just need to lose one more time, and I'm dropping. And we go round 5, Fire King Snake Eye. I had been expecting this matchup from the very beginning, and instead I get pitted against myself and then 2 voiceless players trying to be me. But at the same time, I was also expecting with such a shit record that I wouldn't see any Fire King Snake Eye this low in the table count, but sure enough, someone slipped through the cracks and ended up all the way the hell down by me. And he looked pretty pissed off, which scared me because I'm about to puppet lock this man. Despite it being Fire King Snake Eye, he did not start off very well game 1. He won the die roll, he set a singular card, and passed. And there I am with full gas in hand, and I have no clue what I'm going against. Despite having a full hand of gas, I later found out that he bricked on a bunch of disruption, a bunch of hand traps. He ashed me and Veilered me, and despite that, I still only ended up ending on Quem and Cartesia. I then set 2 super polys and passed to him, and what does he do? He draws normal summons Droll and Lockbird and link summons into Linkuriboh and passes. Now, I technically still have no clue what this guy's playing. Linkuriboh could just mean anything. However, Linkuriboh is kind of a dead giveaway that it's probably Snake Eye Fire King. So at that point, I realized I need to finish him this turn because if he top decks any of his engine, I'm fucked. That being said, my top deck was not that great, so I went to battle, attacked with Cartesia, he went Linkuriboh, attacked with Quem, and then I activated my Super Poly to make Garura, and he scooped, and we went to game 2. Game 2 was a bit scary because I actually forgot to side out the puppet, and he went first, so it was a little scary, but I still ended up winning game 2. Long story short, he didn't end on a very impressive end board for a Snake Eye Fire King deck, and I was able to just kind of super poly it all away to make Mud Dragon, I believe. I went Mud Dragon, declare fire, so Kirin was no longer a problem, and then I proceeded to do the puppet lock. Or so I tried. Halfway through the combo, he did end up Nibiruing me. However, Nibiru was too little too late because the moment he activated Nibiru, I had triple tactics thrust. I searched out Nadir, and I went Nadir to go for the rest of the puppet lock combo. I then passed turn, and on his draw phase, I set up the puppet lock, and the moment puppet hits his board, he scoops, and he just started fuming. Like I said, this guy came to the table pretty fucking pissed. I imagine he was not happy to play the best deck in the format, and he is all the way down at the lower tables with me, just to later get puppet locked, and he went first. So at this point, I am 2-2-1. I have 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw, and one of those wins is a Fire King. So I'm actually feeling a lot better because I beat the best deck in the format. But that being said, there's still 4 rounds in this, and round 6, I went against Heroes. Round 6 was pretty anticlimactic, honestly. Game 1, I went first. I puppet locked him. He tried to play through it. It didn't really go very well. Game 2, he Dark Angel locked me, and I'm looking at a handful of 5 spells. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't know what to do with this. I managed to draw it out for 5 turns because he just refused to end my board or end my Dark Angel misery. And so I just kind of looked at him and said, it's only fair. And then I scooped and we went to game 3. Game 3, despite the fact that he later told me he sided the Droplet and the DD Crow, he did not see either of them, and I ended up puppet locking him again. And, you know, he scooped after I puppet locked him a second time in the same game 3. He was a very good sport about it. Unlike the last guy, I understand puppet lock is not a very thrilling thing to get hit by. I'm certainly not a fan of it when it happens to me, but he was a good sport about it, and we move on to round 7. So I have 3 wins back to back to back under my belt, and I'm feeling a lot better after the horrible start. But at the same time, I'm still feeling that pressure that any loss means I'm pretty much out of the loop here. And we're back to Fire King Snake Eye. And not only that, I lost the die roll. So the Fire King Snake Eye guy ends up going first, and he sets up a pretty substantial board, nothing overly impressive, and that is simply because he didn't see any of the Snake Eye. I ended up breaking the board and OTKing him, and we went to game 2, where he once again chose to go first. This time, however, he saw the Snake Eye engine. I couldn't break the board. We went game 3. Game 3, there's 13 minutes on the clock, so I know that there's not a lot of time, and time is not in my favor since I don't have Masquerade in my extra deck. So I choose to go first. I choose to go for the puppet lock. I pass turn, and sure enough, he opens DD Crow. So immediately, I feel a bit of a panic because he outed my win condition. He comes really close to breaking my board. He doesn't fully break my board. However, there's 2 minutes on the clock after he ends battle phase. He's a good sport about it. He doesn't cheese it out for 2 whole minutes, even though I know Fire King Snake Eye can certainly just keep comboing and progressing the game state for 2 minutes. He didn't cheese it out. We got back to me. I managed to actually set up a very, very strong board with Lulu-Wa Lilith, which boosted me twice, not only on his turn, but on my turn. So my Lulu was 35, my Masquerade, or not my Masquerade, my Mirror Jade was 4K, and my Granganol was 3,500. I ended up being able to beat him by 300 life points, and like I said, he was a very good sport about it. I do appreciate that he did not just cheese me out for 2 whole minutes. So here we are 2 rounds away from either getting the invite or not getting the invite. I am 1 loss away from losing it all. And I, in round 8, went against Vanquish Soul, which I immediately got a little cocky, and because of that cockiness, it kind of costed me the invite. But no, I didn't lose. This is the draw. Game 1 ended up lasting 25 minutes, and that's simply because he just would refuse to lose. I ended up beating him game 1. I puppet locked him twice, and he just, again, would refuse to lose, and he ended up scooping with 15 minutes left on the clock. Game 2, he ends up setting up a pretty significant board with the trap card, Fenrir, Borger, and a couple of other things, and I draw, and I set up Shaddoll Fusion, App Cologne to negate the Fenrir, and then Beast draw card, and sure enough, I draw Triple Tactics Thrust. From there, I proceed to just combo off like crazy, and I top decked off of the Garura Dump a Super Poly. I broke his board. I currently have life point lead by like 200 life points, and I know he has Heavy Borger in hand. I then proceed to not set the Super Poly and pass my turn. And it is because of this very minute misplay that I forgot to set the Super Poly that he summons the Borger off of tagging out with Ryzen and hits me for 1,500, whereas 2 seconds after that happens, time in the round is called. The reason this is a misplay is because Borger is not an on-summon effect, so on response to the summon, I could have went Super Poly to fuse the Dark Heavy Borger and my Dark App Cologne to make Mud Dragon, and then he would not have been able to hit me for 1,500, and he committed his normal summon already, so there really was no more plays for him to make, and I would have gotten the win. And the reason this is even more annoying is because in round 9, I proceeded to win against Fire King Snake Eye again. If I had won against that Vanquish Soul player, I would have gotten 19 points, and the cutoff for the invite at this regional was 18 points. Now, I do understand that misplays happen, and you sometimes you're just gonna mess up, but this was such a small thing that cost me an invite that I was so close to getting after clawing my way out of the abyss that it's something that at the current moment I still haven't gotten over. I'm still beating myself up about it. But that being said, I also can acknowledge where I misplayed in several of these games and what I could have done better, which I think even if you win a game, acknowledging where you could have played better makes you a better player. But, you know, at the same time, there are also instances where you couldn't have played better, and that's also just a fair thing. But when you could have played better, even if you win or lose, you should be able to acknowledge when you could have played better. So yeah, unfortunately, I did not get my invite. It happens, unfortunately. But I do also have another regional in 2 weeks, funny enough, and I'm hoping to go to that one, and hopefully this time I'll get that invite. But I know what you all are here for. You're here for the deck list on what I ran at this regional, so let's just jump right into that. All right, so I had to turn a bigger light on, so you're just gonna have to deal with the massive glare off the top of my cranium here, but we're going to start, of course, with, you know, the main deck. So we have, you know, the Givens, the 3 Fallen of Albaz, the 3 Aluber, the 1 Quem, and 2 Cartesia. You could do 2 Quem if you absolutely want. I prefer just 1 Quem because it is just recyclable, and you don't always want to see it in your opening hand, if really ever. You kind of want to summon it off of like Titaniclad or even Branded Opening. You don't really ever want to see it in your opening hand. But 2 Cartesia is kind of a must. I've seen some people running 3. I don't agree with that. We, of course, have a bunch of 1-0s. We have 1 Bestial Lubellion. We have 1 Bestial Saronir. We have 1 Tri-Brigade Mercurier. You could run 2. I only run 1 because I'm not running the Gold Sark. If you're running Gold Sark, you have to run 2 because you always want to see 1 for the hand trap effect. But I only run the 1 Mercurier because, again, it's searchable. I'm not running Gold Sark. I've seen some people not run Gold Sark and run 2 Mercurier. I really don't agree with that, but I digress. We run 1 Albion the Shrouded Dragon. A lot of people have been running 3 of this, or even 2 of it. 3 of it if you're running a 60 card pile, 2 of it if you're running kind of like a 50. This is a 45 card deck. You're going to see 44 cards here in the video, and I'll explain when we get to that. But it's a 45 card deck, and it's searchable. You really don't want to like see it a whole bunch. It is busted. It's a strong ass card. Getting one of your branded cards into the graveyard, or even Albaz, so you can special Cartesia from hand, and then just drawing a card replaces itself. Card's crazy. And also the send is for cost, so even if they ash it for whatever reason, you still get that card into the graveyard. And then we also have 1 Dogmatica Maximus. This is basically like the 1 card Gimmick Puppet combo, especially if they ash your Branded Fusion. I actually really like this build because if they ash your Branded Fusion, you can still like fall back on the Deer Servant or something. Maximus is crazy. You just dump Garua off into Deer, search Maximus, Garua draws a card, Maximus banishes Garua, and then dumps Titaniclad and Albion, so that way you can set up Quem and Branded in red. So, card's crazy, card's cracked, and if you're not already playing it, I sincerely suggest it. Also, in this format, the Fire Kings don't really like dumping things out of their graveyard, or out of their extra deck, so, you do this, they really have to think. I know one of my Fire King opponents ended up dumping like Amblo Whale, and that's a 1-of in their deck. And he's just like, I didn't know what to dump. And then the last 2 1-ofs is Despian Tragedy and Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. Tragedy, of course, is like your dump target off of like Foolish Burial or something like that. Just really can help you get started. It can fix hands. Also, it can help you recur Branded Retribution if you're not ready to use Retribution's graveyard effect. I did recycle Retribution, I think, twice, so that way I could keep Albaz Fusions in the extra deck, so that way Mirror Jade never runs out of ammo. And then Puppet is Puppet. The last 2 cards here is kind of the spice, the goo. A lot of people have been running these cards in the side. I decided to put them in the main because I think they're really valuable. But also, I don't like them clogging up my side deck because they do take about half of the side deck. And that is Shaddoll Beast and Shaddoll Aerial. Now, most people are running the Shaddoll engine in the side deck, and when they do run it, they're running Dragon, not Beast. I don't have a Dragon, and none of my friends have a Dragon, apparently. I have since ordered a Dragon. However, at this regional, at no point did I wish I had Dragon. Beast got so much use out of this regional. I can't tell you how many times I drew a card off of him. There were duels where I actually drew off of him multiple times. He got a lot of use. Aerial, she was sided out a lot, but ideally in the Fire King format, I can dump her off of like Foolish Burial, or even dump her off of Shaddoll Fusion if I'm going second, and then she'll target 3 cards in my opponent's graveyard, ideally the Fire Kings, and banish them. Card's crazy. Like I said, I run the Shaddolls in the main deck. Most people are running them inside. I just don't want them clogging up my side deck, and I am able to fit them in the main. So Why not? Also, Shaddoll Fusion is searchable off of Thrust. As for the spells, I am running, of course, the standard 3 branded Fusion, the 3 branded Opening, and then I am running 1 branded in High Spirits, 1 branded Lost, and 1 branded in Red. A lot of my branded opponents were funny enough running 2 branded in Red. I can respect it. I don't personally like doing it because then I see it way too fucking often. But I can definitely respect running 2 of it. But it's already a 45 card deck. I don't want to run more than that, ideally. Brandon High Spirits got a lot of use out of this current regional. Was just able to save me from like the shifters. My opponent would go draw face shifter, and I would chain High Spirits so I can get some of that stuff into the graveyard still. Just overall, I liked the performance out of High Spirits, and the rest are just kind of standard. As I mentioned a moment ago when I was talking about Maximus, I am running 3 Nadir Servants of varying rarities because Rarity Collection was not kind to me with the same rarity. Nadir Servant's just incredibly powerful. It's your kind of backup if they ash your Branded Fusion. It is searchable via Thrust, so like the ideal scenario is you open 1 Branded Fusion and Nadir, or a Branded Fusion and a way to get to Nadir, aka Thrust. That actually happened a couple of times. Thrust also just, or not Thrust, Nadir can also just save you if you get nibbed at a really bad time, because obviously Nadir says that you can't special summon from the extra deck after the card resolves, so it's usually the last card you activate. So if they nib you mid combo, you can just Nadir Servant. I'm also running 3 Fusion Deployment. The card's just free. It helps you get Cartesia on the board for free, or even Albaz to justify some going second plays. It's just insane. I have, however, considered cutting it to 2 instead of 3. There are times that I just see this card way too often, or I see too many of it, and it just doesn't get me anywhere. But overall, like I said, it gets Cartesia onto the board if you have no other way to get to her. Gets Albaz onto the board if you open Cartesia, so you can just summon Albaz, special Cartesia. Still make some plays there. We run 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is just kind of a backup. I, at this regional, funny enough, did some fun stuff with Called by the Grave, where my opponent tried to activate Promethean Princess, and I just called by it. Same with Amblone Veil, funny enough, and even the Flameburst Dragon. Like, Called by just did some good stuff, except for, I don't think I ever used it on an Ash Blossom, funny enough. I did use it on a Ghost Belt, but Called by, just crazy card. I think the card needs to come back to 2 personally, with just all the shenanigans going on with hand traps currently. But I'm sure I'm a minority in that opinion. We run 2 Triple Tactics Thrusts. At the regional, I ran 3. That's what I was talking about by the 45 card deck. I ran 3, but in this video I'm running 44 because I was borrowing the 3rd Thrust. These 2 are mine. I just borrowed a 3rd copy for the regional. And then 1 Triple Tactics Talent, and 1 Shaddoll Fusion. Like I said, searchable off Thrust. You don't always want to see this card. You can also just like search it off App Cologne, discard a card, which, yes, I'm running App Cologne, as I've just revealed. And then the last 3 spells is Super Poly. Strongest card in the format currently. The amount of times I heard Super Poly from other games, card was crazy. It's probably the most played card in the current format because it just outs so many boards. Whether it is Fire King Snake Eye, Branded, it outs Goaty boards, funny enough. It just outs Raid Raptor boards as long as they don't have the big guy on the board. It's an incredibly powerful card. And there's no way to stop it. If it happens, you're just fucked. As for traps, I only run 2 traps, the standard Retribution and Duplication. There's been 1,000 times I considered running 2 Retribution. But I understand that that's not a good play. The card's really powerful, but if you see it in your opening hand, you're not really happy about it. And then Duplication, like I said, this card got a lot more powerful over the weekend when I realized it can target any fusion or polymerization card in either graveyard. So this in the mirror match is just crazy. As for the extra deck, it looks pretty standard to a branded extra deck minus the Shaddoll cards, but we run 2 Mirror Jade, 2 Albion, 1 Lubellion, 1 Albion, 1 Titaniclad, 1 Rinbrum, 1 Granganol, and then I run the Lulu. Some builds don't run Lulu, some builds only run 1 Mirror Jade. Just depends on what you're looking to do. I play a lot of like the grind game, I feel, with branded, so 2 Mirror Jade is just kind of a must to out very annoying cards, and especially in Fire King Snake Eye format, the grind game is very real. So I think 2 Mirror Jade's kind of a must. Lulu put in a lot of work this format. I was not sold on this card when it first released, and up until recently, I was never sold on this card. Lulu did a lot. Lulu was a fucking threat to the Fire King cards. This card was just crazy. And the fact that I can summon it for free off Granganol was also crazy. As for the rest of the extra deck, we of course had the 2 super poly targets of Garura and Mudragon. There were a couple of times I was wishing I ran 2 Garura or 2 Mudragon, but obviously not, especially in a tight extra deck like Branded. We run the 1 Guardian Chimera, and then we run the 2 Shaddolls of App Cologne and Winda. Now, Winda did not come up once. Winda got summoned once in the entire 9 rounds, and it was outed immediately. Winda was kind of a last resort, too. I didn't even want to summon it there, but it was like really the only play I could make there. And unfortunately, they had the out to it. They had Forbidden Droplet and just didn't care. App Cologne came up. App Cologne got summoned once, but I dumped it off Nadir a couple of times, I believe. And I used it to search out Branded or Shaddol Beast and then discard Shaddol Beast to draw a card. Especially since Garura was already out of the extra deck, so I was still able to kind of do a Garura there. That's really it for the extra deck. The Shaddolls do a lot of work. I'm not sold on Winda, but Winda's also just because it didn't come up at the regional doesn't mean it doesn't come up at all. So that's the only reason I've kept it in here. I have, however, considered cutting it to run Masquerade, but since the regional, I just put Masquerade in the side, and if I end up going to time, I'll side out the Winda to summon to put Masquerade in the extra deck. For my side at the regional, my side deck was crafted for the regional. I was expecting to see certain decks, some of which I did not see. But overall, the side deck was, I was a little disappointed with a couple of the cards in the side deck, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But for the side deck, I ran 3 Forbidden Droplet. I primarily sided this in against Voiceless Voice, and this was before I realized you have to out their board twice, technically. But this was also for if I got Jowgen locked. I expected Jowgen lock for people who couldn't afford Gimmick Puppet, even though Gimmick Puppet's kind of cheap now after the Battles of Legend. But Droplet put in a lot of work. I put it in the main deck for the Fire King Snake Eye matchup a couple of times. It put in a lot of work. But it was primarily here for Voiceless. But I do have to rethink how I want to make my side for Voiceless going forward, because that deck fucked me up. Now, I was expecting to see Fluandereeze at this regional. There were some Fluandereeze players, but I did not see them. But I did run Necro World Banshee and Zombie World in the side in case I did see them. I did not. There were a couple of instances where I kind of wanted to run this against Fire King. I opted not to because it wouldn't have gotten enough utility. It would have really only stopped the Arvada from summoning back a Beast, Wing Beast, or Beast Warrior from the graveyard, since they're all zombies. But I did expect to see Fluandereeze. It was just unfortunate I didn't see them. For the card that I was most disappointed with in my side deck, it was Simmel Archfiends. This is a card that a buddy of mine kind of recommended to me, and I actually liked how it sounded. The way he worded it was just basically a more up-to-date version of D-Barrier. Simmel Archfiends just basically is neither player can summon a monster type that they already control or something like that this turn. So the point was, like, it's a thrust target, set it going first, and then Fire King Snake Eye, they summon Linkuriboh, and you just flip this, and then they can't link summon for the rest of the turn, which obviously for the most part stops their turn. It never saw play. This was kind of like a cope, but I was also experimenting a bit. I might try and play with it a little bit more in the future. I do like how it sounds, and I like the idea on paper, but I think it needs more execution practice before trying to keep doing it. But overall, I mean, I was just disappointed because it never came up. Other thrust targets, I ran the Different Dimension Ground and Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched never came up, although realistically it probably should have came up against Voiceless. I just never saw it. I sided it against Voiceless twice, just never saw it. For more Fire King stuff, we have Solemn Strike. They just summon out the Witch, and you just tell them no, essentially. But also, it's just a very powerful card. I believe I sided it against the branded matchup, because Lubellion and Cartesia are both inherent summons, so you can just stop that in its tracks as well. I just didn't see it in those matchups as well. As for back row removal, we have Duster and 3 Cosmic. Cosmic came in clutch actually against the Fire Kings. I set 2 Cosmic from my opening hand, and he put Poplar in the He put Poplar in the back row, and then he activated the field spell. I just flipped both of them, banished both the Poplar and the field spell, and he kind of just ended his turn there, which meant he didn't really have much in his hand. But that's it for the side deck. So overall, this regional was a good experience. I came really close to getting my invite, and I'm still very bummed that I did not get it, but it happens. Even some of the best players don't top from time to time. It just is part of the game. Luck is a factor in this game at times. I'm not going to do a test hand in this video because this wasn't technically a deck list video. I was just showing off the deck list that I used for the regional. But overall, I had a good time, and I do expect to get my invite at the next regional. So stay tuned for that recap video, which will hopefully be in like 2 weeks. But also let me know what you all think about like these recap videos of events that I go to, so I can maybe make more in the future. I do like talking about like what I could have done better or just my experiences overall. So let me know down in the comments below if you liked that. But with that, I will see you all in the next video next week. I don't plan on making a second video this week, but we'll just kind of see how it turns out. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next week.